of Events and Education for Tradepress Media Group. I'd like to thank you for joining today's webcast event, Fixing the Closeout Breakdown in Construction and Maintenance for Healthcare Facilities.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, everybody, for joining me today. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I think most of the audience should be able to relate to many portions of this. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest challenges that I hear over and over and over again is there's a real disconnect between design construction teams and facilities teams. And it creates this giant risk. And we're going to talk about that and some of the impacts of that. Also, how it can impact your business continuity as a whole. But we're going to start, as Wendy mentioned, we're going to understand why it's just crucial that your team is looking at accurate data and they can access it when they need it. Also, identifying those missing and outdated components and parts of your buildings. Also, recognizing the issues of undocumented facility changes, the things that your team changes all the time that don't necessarily get documented. Also, we're going to look at the cost impacts of rework and change orders during projects. Some of this is caused by those undocumented changes that have happened over time. Also, how poor data affects compliance and safety and puts your organization in some potential risk. Also, we're going to explore ways to connect that construction and facilities team, pulling it all together so everybody's looking at the same current information, and they also have the ability to see all of the legacy information and those changes that have happened over time. And then the real value that you're going to find in having a single source. Everything's in one spot, and all the key stakeholders need to have access to it, and they can access it 24/7. We're going to jump in now. So this is a statement that I love. It's you can't manage what you can't see. It's those things, those unknowns, those hidden things, those changes that weren't documented over time. But in construction and facilities maintenance, missing building data isn't just an inconvenience. It's a liability. Think about it during projects. If I'm missing documentation showing changes and all of a sudden my GC or my trade starts swinging sledgehammers and knocking down walls and they hit something. Everything they hit and everything they find means more money. It's a change order. It means unforeseen condition change orders. And we're going to talk about that in depth here in a few minutes. But the challenge is, again, there's that disconnect between construction and facilities teams. So construction teams rely on up-to-date as-built to design, renovate, and plan safely. So they want to make sure that they have full exposure to that information. But the challenge is facilities teams often operate reactively, making undocumented changes. They're busy. They're short-staffed in many cases, and they're running around like crazy, putting out fire after fire. And the challenge is a lot of that stuff doesn't get documented. It's not pointing fingers at anybody. It's just reality. They just don't have enough time. But without that shared access to accurate documentation, accurate building information, well, it creates this critical knowledge loss between handoffs. So think about the time that a project's wrapped up, you get the keys, they hand it over to you. What's that delay time that you're often seeing in getting that closeout package, getting those drawings, getting all the other supporting documentation for the equipment? All of that causes delays, which means your team is operating blind. Okay, and there's a time lapse there that happens that can get people into trouble. But also renovation projects start with assumptions, not facts, if they don't have all the current and the historical stuff all in one spot. So full visibility, full transparency through that entire process. So the other challenge, what that means for real world impacts for inaccurate or missing information is mechanical equipment location issues. So think about it. Difficulty locating which ceiling tile do I pop to find that fan coil unit? What ceiling tile do I pop to find that water isolation valve? Or, I'm in a stadium right now. I'm actually on site doing this recording live from a football stadium. And there's a ton of water heaters up in the ceiling grid. Water heaters, those little pot water heaters. That's what we're documenting right now. But think about all the stuff that you can't find and it's not documented. So again, if you don't know where it is, it delays your reaction times and delays your ability to go in and fix the problem and get everything back up to speed, especially in an emergency, especially with leaks or failures. But it increases your downtime and risks of damage. The longer things run, or the longer that HVAC is not working, the longer you can't run your ORs. Okay. The water's running, it can impact a whole floor or multiple floors. Water, I always say this, water finds a way. Water finds a way from floor to floor, room to room. And, it doesn't stop until you stop it. So it's critical that we know where that information is. But also technicians waste a ton of time looking for that stuff. And they're finding those hidden things that they didn't even know were there. And I always challenge people to think like this. If my team's on a ladder and they're working on a smoke detector or they're working on a fan coil unit, and they turn their head around and they see, wait a minute, there's 3 valves behind me. How do they document that? Do you have a method to document that? If you don't, you need to reach out to me at the end. But more importantly, you got to be able to document the stuff your team finds every day. And that's what this critical is. This shouldn't be a static thing that only is done once and you can't update it as your building changes, because your building changes all the time. Not always big stuff, but even the little stuff means all the world to your team when they need to be able to react when it counts. But shutoffs are a huge one, and emergency equipment is huge. Again, water finds a way. Well, so does gas. Gas leaks all over the place. You can smell it. It can impact your facility. Power, losing power in a building, and I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like. But again, if you don't know where that stuff is, it increases your response times in a crisis. When things are going sideways, if you can't respond, again, it can things don't get better in emergencies over time, right? They get worse. So being able to be proactive and know exactly where stuff is to be able to respond is a big deal. But also, if you don't have that, it creates safety and compliance violations, especially in healthcare. You don't want to get dinged during your reviews. You don't want to get dinged when the fire marshal walks in either. All right. So think about all of the information all in one spot, your extinguishers, exit signs, all of the stuff in your building, all of it documented all in one spot, and everybody can find it. Even the new person who started a week ago, they get access to it day one. They know where everything is in your building. So other challenges, though, are renovation risks, are change orders and cost overruns. So change orders from missing or inaccurate as-built, or some of the common causes are structural elements not where plans show. I just did a recording with one of our clients, a video case study with them, and he said he calls them nearly built. They're not as-built, they're nearly built. He said stuff is not always exactly where they show up on the plans. So those structural elements not being where they say they are can cause big problems. Also, undocumented mechanical reroutes, meaning where the chase is, where you run in your electrical lines, your plumbing, that can again cost money. So no record of internal team renovations done as well. So those changes, those little things that change that never get reported back to design construction either. So again, everybody should be looking at the same stuff. Changes that are made by design construction, changes that are made by facilities, all of them are in one spot. Everybody's looking at the same stuff. But the impact is design revisions and work stoppages, because you find stuff, that hidden stuff, especially during projects. You find something, there's got to be there's that process for documenting what that was, what that means to your budget, and all of that communication process is a big deal, and it causes time. Okay, time shortages, and stoppages, but also can cause scheduling delays and reevaluating the overall scope of the project. I've heard multiple times that because that unknown that you didn't give them all the documentation during design construction, now your GC and your architect they're just dinging you for every change, for everything you weren't able to show them. Well, imagine showing them everything. They have the entire historical record. Everybody's looking at the same stuff. But then you've got that budget inflation due. And again, it's that labor material cost too. So again, it's a compounded, I look at that as the snowball just keeps getting worse if you don't give them all the information. But these are just some examples of what we're seeing for cost overruns in real numbers. So 86% of projects experience cost overruns. So think about the projects that you have in-house, and then think about the overruns. Think about the other things and how many of those were because they didn't know that something was where it was saying where you thought it had moved or it was changed, or you know what, how many times are you digging out in the parking lot or digging next to a building that you're going to renovate and they hit a line. A lot of old buildings have old stuff that is lost. It's not documented, and even when they find it, they still don't have a way to document it so that the next project is impacted as well. So it's that snowball again. But the average cost overruns for medium-sized projects is 32.5%. And there's the source down there too, but 31% of projects manage not to exceed the budget by more than 10%. And also 20% contingencies for cost overruns recommended by their lenders. 20%, $100 million project. Think about that. What's 20%? 20 million, right? It's a big number. So again, you want to make sure that you can have all of that information, all of that in one spot, and everybody's looking at it. Okay, so to minimize some of these cost overrun numbers. The cost statistics, though, this is a big one too, is average construction projects experience 4 to 6% cost increases due to change orders. Up to 30% of construction project costs are due to rework. So think about that. Think about your situation. Think about your projects. I'd love to talk to you after this webinar too, to hear about some of those challenges you face, because again, I share this out industry wide, and I love that people want to share and they don't want other people to experience what they ran into. So let's talk about that too. But according to FMI, the average cost of rework is $17.04 per square foot. I'd never seen that kind of a stat before. That's staggering to me. Okay, that's a big number. But for a 100,000 square foot facility, that's 1.7 million in potential rework, much of it due to poor information, poor data. And the U.S. Department of Energy shows that they did a study that shows incomplete building documentation adds 10 to 15% to life cycle costs. So again, things to think about here. But these are the real problems too. Unforeseen condition change orders. You gave them the last 10 years worth of documentation for your 50-year-old building, and the change they needed to see was in the drawings that were 20 years old, okay, or even 30 years ago. You made changes, they didn't know about it, so they start ripping open walls, they start making changes to your building, and they hit stuff, they find stuff. Every one of those ends up being a change order. You didn't tell them, you didn't show them, they had no visibility. Well, think about this. What if you gave them all the documentation every year, everything you've got, they've got it. And now it falls back on them. You didn't see it. Well, it was in that drawing set that I gave you that shows from 30 years ago. There it is. Think about that. What would the impact be if you gave them full visibility to everything that's changed in your building? Can that minimize those change orders? Potentially. And it could be substantial, especially when it's the big stuff that's not documented. Now they have full visibility through the entire construction process. It's a big one. So the impact on safety and compliance is unknown utility lines. It's like I was saying earlier, you start digging, you hit stuff, but it can cause risks during renovations, demolition, but also incorrect fire suppression or life safety paths could be potential liability in emergencies. Are your life safety drawings up to date? How are you saving all of that in one spot so everybody can find that? Also, think about the staff, patients, and guests that are put at risk due to inaccessible emergency tools or even signage errors, okay, that are documented. Again, big deal. It's a really big deal. But most renovations result in more documentation, new equipment, and even shutoff moves and other things. Panels change. Anything that touches a particular part of the building traditionally moves something or changes something. and documenting that and getting that documentation. Where does it live when you get it? And that's what I'm going to show you here in a few minutes. But what had changed is I call this the search. Okay. Oftentimes guys are not able to document stuff. Your team is running around like crazy and they start hunting. So if I tell you, I'm the new guy and I need to go out, I've just been with your organization for 2 weeks, and you say, oh yeah, that's an AHU. It's up in the ceiling grid. Which panel do I pop? Which tile do I pop in the grid? I have no idea. So I start doing this, start popping tiles. Okay. And there it is. Okay. But never fails. The first one I pop, I'm under a pan or under something that I can't get access to, or I'm under lines or whatever the case may be. But documenting even what panel to pop to be able to get access to that saves that big word I'm going to say over and over again, time. Time is not our friend in facilities, certainly not our friend in design construction. But having all of that documented so everybody's on the same page saves so much time and also saves money, but also includes, it helps minimize the risk to your organization. So hidden cost to facilities teams is time loss. Okay, technicians spend 30 to 40% of their time locating information on equipment. Okay, they don't know where the manual is. They don't know where it's located. They got to go find a drawing. Where do the lines run? Where's it fed from? All of that is time. And also the deferred maintenance is impacted by undocumented systems. Things are out there, but how can you plan for something that you don't even know is out there? You don't even know it exists. I was actually just talking to an electrician yesterday. He'd been with the organization for 5 years. Huge facility, but he'd been with the organization for 5 years. He just found an electrical room he didn't even know it existed. It was under some stairs. He had no idea. There were 6 panels and 2 transformers in that room. He's never been in that room. So again, it's that undocumented stuff. So think about it. He didn't know for 5 years that even existed or where it was. How long do you think it would take him to try and track down on a plan, on an as-built, on an electrical drawing, when it's not even documented because they moved stuff and they implemented stuff, or they updated panels, or they installed a new panel? All of that stuff, if it's not documented, what would happen if that happened and something went sideways? They lost power to the half of the building and they're controlled by that little room that he just found. Think about that. But also regulatory non-compliance can be a big deal too. So outdated life safety drawings can lead to citations, failed accreditation audits, all the different things that are associated with that. I'm a firm believer information is our power. Okay. You got to have all the information all in one spot. Everybody's in control of what's in that spot and everybody can access it when they need it. Okay. Whether it's non-emergency or an emergency, everybody's on the same page, everybody's looking for it, and everybody can find it in seconds, not hours, not 30 to 40 minutes on one thing. They can find it right now. But again, the vicious cycle is not documenting changes. So facilities teams are often fixing stuff, they're digging stuff up on the fly. Right? They don't document it. They don't have a method to document it. Those undocumented fixes are future hazards. Okay. If you can't even take a photo and attach it someplace so that everybody sees it, then you're the only person that knows where it is. Or maybe there's 2 guys on the team. Oh, you know what? One guy just gave us notice he's leaving. Oh, you're retiring? Now nobody knows where it is. Those are single points of failure. Think about that. If it's in one person's head, one single point of failure, right? Got to document where that stuff is so it's a benefit of the entire organization. And also your vendors have access to that too. But renovation teams encounter surprises all the time. Again, it can cause more change orders, delays, and again, more undocumented updates. And again, look at that mess that's right there in that photo, right? That happens. And if it's not documented, they just bury it and move on to the next thing. Well, that doesn't help the next person. They can't even see that photo. Again, document, document, document. So the fundamentals are, here's the other big challenge is 65% of buildings are still in paper form. Okay, think about that. Do you have a plan room? Or have you taken the leap and started scanning stuff and you still can't find stuff, right? I hear that all the time. But 86% of facilities managers say they don't have instant access to that information, which means they're not prepared for emergencies. They're not prepared when something goes sideways. And then it's that time. All right. It takes so much time to be able to respond. 72% of buildings are over 20 years old, and 1 in 3 buildings is over 50 years old. Again, old buildings, more stuff. Accessing all of that information is a big deal, but also 20 to 40% of assets in the field have been replaced, decommissioned, moved, or they're new. What's the process that you have for documenting those changes? And we'll talk about that in a little while, about ways that you can document that. But again, it's all those things that change on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis that aren't documented. And it's just a snowball of stuff that you can't find stuff. It's a problem. So also the challenge with that is many organizations struggle with this. A director goes into the office of his COO or a CFO and says, listen, we've got a problem. We need to, especially in budget season, we need to really look at replacing some of these pieces of equipment. Our C-suite, our leadership traditionally, they're not techs in the field. They don't know what it means if this system goes down or that system fails. So we need to educate them on what that means. If this unit fails, just sliding a number on a spreadsheet across the table that says you need $100,000 for AHU, they may not even know what AHU means, right? But if you put it in these kind of terms, think about it as a heat map, okay? Showing the area, where's the unit? If you look on this screen here, there's a little dot there. That's an air handler, right? But they highlighted where that air handler touches. So it impacts ORs 1 through 4, the PACU and ICU. That leadership understands. If that unit fails, we lose air conditioning. We lose the ability to heat and cool that area, okay? Which means, again, it's a snowball. They don't need to know the mechanics of the what's and the whys, but they need to know the why when you have to shut the ORs down or you have to shut the PACU or ICU down because that piece of equipment failed. Then that number's no brainer, $100,000, and we don't lose that. And it's at the end of life, and it's 3 years past the end of life. It's time to replace. That's real things that they can understand, and that shows the actual impact if that fails. That's a really, really big deal. The other challenges here, though, are teams are frustrated. They're hunting for stuff. They're digging. They're wasting a ton of time. And I call this the skull hold. He's got his hands in his head and he's just shaking his head and he's frustrated because he's just digging and digging. He goes into a plan room, spends 2 hours trying to find stuff, or he spends 4 hours trying to find stuff. And he finally just gives up and goes out in the field and tries to hunt. And he spends 2 or 3 hours tracing lines trying to find stuff. Do that math. It's 2 hours doing this, 3 hours doing that, an hour doing this, half hour, 20 minutes, whatever the case may be. How many times are your team doing that a week? It may not be every guy or gal on your team every day, but it happens. Well, it also happens for your design construction team. It also happens for the contractors that you're working with. Again, time is not our friend. It's a big deal. But this is the challenge. If you've got one of these, we need to talk. I mean, get rid of this. But if you just are scanning stuff in and dumping it on a share drive, that doesn't help the guy who's in a mechanical room or on a roof. If he can't access it and see all the drawings all in one spot and not have to open every single file and try and find it, it's no different than opening up every single roll. If I dump a bunch of stuff on a share drive and it's not labeled and I can't find it, it's not searchable, it's no different than looking through a roll. It's waste of time. Again, there's that word, time. But here's the other challenge. When something goes sideways, well, what if it happens in your plan room? This is an example. A sprinkler head burst in the room next to a plan room, and it went into the actual plan room. Destroyed irreplaceable documents, one of a kind. 60, 70, 80-year-old buildings. They have one building that's labeled a historical building. Those original drawings are gone, okay? Many of them are gone forever. So The remaining ones, they got digitized. Now they have instant access to that. You don't want to get caught where you're only relying on paper. Paper doesn't get better over time either. It fades. You got old blue lines. You got old Mylars. They're shredded. It's a problem. And getting that stuff digital, but in a format you can find it right now, is the big deal. So again, scanning's not enough. If I just dump it on there, still can't find it. And a lot of times I hear people, they've either scanned it in-house or just got stuff scanned, dump it on a share drive, they revert back to paper because they can't find anything. In that list that you see on the right-hand side, there's nothing that even says what building it's for. Let alone if I've got 100 buildings on my campus and there's 50 different sets or 100 different plan sets for that building, which one's the most recent and which one touched the third floor? I'm going to show you that in a minute. But again, how do I find the stuff to do my job? It takes so much time, either one of these formats. But again, current as-built, current information is stored. It's a mess. And I can't tell you how many times I've been looking for drawings with a client. He's showing me his process, and then he opens up a floor or a building, and he opens up a drawing set, and the drawing set folder is empty because somebody accidentally deleted it. It happens, all right? But again, how do I get that back? It's gone. It's gone forever. The other challenge is this. They've got a guy or gal on the team that's been there forever, and we refer to him as Carl. There's Bob. I've heard Vin. I've heard all different names, right? That's the guy. Everybody calls Carl. Everybody calls this one person because he's been here forever. Carl's not going to be there forever. And at some point, Carl's going to retire or he's going to leave and take another job. And again, single points of failure. If everybody's relying on one person, what are you going to do when he leaves, right? He walks out that door. It's a challenge because he takes all of that institutional knowledge with him. Well, imagine being able to document that stuff with Carl before he leaves. That's a proactive approach. But the reality is many customers report 6 to 12 months before they even receive their closeout package. So they're operating blind for a long time. Months of operating without correct documentation. Again, they're operating blind for a long time. They're trying to find stuff that they have no documentation for, and they're trying to maintain it. A lot of it's under warranty for the first year. A lot of it falls out. So if you're not getting, or falls off, if you're not getting your closeout package for a year, think about that. It's out of warranty before you even get the closeout package, okay? It's out of warranty before you even get the closeout package. So now the challenge is you're running into a buzzsaw. You're hunting. You're trying to find stuff. But facilities teams must do research on their own to find O&Ms. Find that. They're doing Google searches trying to find stuff because they don't receive that for that 6 to 12 months. Also, the next renovation may start before they've even received those packages. Closeout packages happen, and then I've had multiple people that I've talked to, especially manufacturing spaces, where they'll manufacture or they'll do a renovation on a part of a building, and leadership decides they're just going to change it because they need to repurpose some space, or they're going to take over some space. So they, before that renovation's even done or wrapping up, they're modifying it already. So again, it's imperative that we're not operating blind. But how do we bridge that gap? How do we bridge the gap between the old ways of doing business and new modern ways? Let's jump in. So let's take a look at some common facility challenges. So not having a process in place to track active construction projects. That's one. Number two is current building plans and information are unorganized. They're in a plan room. They're on a shared drive. Maybe design construction still has them if facilities doesn't have them. What's a delay in-house too? The other challenge is no system in place to ensure you have access to building information when you need it. Okay. We don't always need it from 8 to 5. We don't always need it from 6 to 3. We need it at 2 o'clock in the morning when something goes sideways, right? But the old way is sitting at a computer, having to go back to a desk, putting my behind in a chair, trying to remember what my password was. And then I go into that folder that I'm looking for and it's empty. So then I go to a plan room or I call somebody to try and find if they have it, whatever the case may be. But look at the guy on the right. He's already on the roof and he's opening up an iPad or a phone, pulling a phone out of his pocket, and he can see everything for that unit. He can see everything full MEP sets, entire historical stuff. He's got manuals. He's got all the stuff associated with that. And he can access it while he's standing in the room, on the roof, wherever the heck he is right now. But you also can access it from home, from the car. You get a phone call on your way home. You pull your car over, pull your phone out of your pocket. You find everything. Old way versus new way. Instant access. That's a big deal. But modern teams have instant access to all their drawings. And let's look at that. So think about this from the standpoint of mapped as-built. So all the drawings that I've ever got, all the different plan sets that I've ever had, all the different projects are now in one spot, all in one spot. Okay? Think about, I open up a floor plan and it shows all the drawing sets, but not just all the drawing sets, it also shows all those color-coded areas there are renovations that have happened on this floor. This floor. So imagine this is first floor of your building and you've done 15 renovations over the last 50 years, right? All of them are on here and it shows just the drawings that touch that floor. As a matter of fact, it color codes and show you what areas were impacted by each project. Because we all know when you get a project and you're only working on part of the building, the southeast corner of the building or suites 1 through 4, or whatever the case may be, right? They don't give you the full floor. They only give you the drawings that show that section of the building that they worked on. They're not redrawing the whole floor. They're doing just that section. So think of it as a puzzle. Now all the puzzle pieces are put together and you know exactly where every renovation touched, all the changes by date, by project name, and full MEP sets linked all in one spot. That's what you can do. But tracking active construction projects is also a problem. Okay, active construction is, think about all the different projects that you've got going on at all your different sites. Having them all in one spot so I can see all the different projects, so plans, specs, RFIs, a discrepancy log showing all the stuff that's missing. But then all of the active current drawings. So think about during construction, you've got all those different projects that are going on at your facilities, but imagine your facilities team having access to current drawings through the entire construction project, all of them. So remember that delay, your as-built and all of your different drawing sets are being absolutely up to date, current, the most recent drawings through the entire process. So that delay is now days, not months, not weeks, not years, days. And you have full visibility of what's going on during the construction process. And you've got all your specs here. Specs are linked. The RFI log, all of it's here. And you have that discrepancy log showing the stuff that's missing. And this is a running tally. So as things are found, this falls off. But you have a full visibility to all of your construction process, all your projects, all in one spot, all at the same time. So think about access to all those changes that have happened over time. Well, what that looks like is there's no need to wait during the project too. So when the project is closing, there's no waiting for those documents from subcontractors. All that's here. All your manuals, all the warranties, all of that's being compiled during construction. And you as the owner have full visibility and you get it immediately. Okay, but now let's talk about a renovation of a part of a building. So I'm working on parts of a building. I've got 2 projects going on and I'm waiting for that project closeout and it's taken a long time. But when it's done, imagine if you got it like this. So remember, I showed this view before. All those different renovations that have touched different parts of your building over time. Well, now new renovations happened. There they are. They show up immediately. The areas that they're touched, okay, are now color-coded. They're layered on top, and you have access to those drawings. You have access to that closeout information quickly, and your team is no longer operating the building blind. You have it fast. Again, time. It's going to save you a tremendous amount of time. But start documenting where your equipment and shutoffs are located today. The longer you wait, people are going to leave that know where all that stuff is, whether they retire, whether they get a different job. A lot of organizations are running, 10, 20, 30% down in headcount right now. Okay. They got a lot of new people that are coming in. Well, new people are blind to your building. So they don't know where stuff is. And one of the biggest problems we always hear is the ramp up time. So having all of that documented, and now everybody has access day one. Everybody, your entire team, design, construction, your facility side, everybody's on the same page. Everybody's looking at the same stuff, and it's all documented throughout time. So even after the project's done, you guys change something else, documenting it quickly, very fast. Okay. Imagine having all of your equipment and shut off locations at your fingertips, pulling your phone out of your pocket, and I can see any piece of equipment by type, by location, by floor, by building, by campus, everything in one spot, all of it in one spot, even the new person. But here's another true story, right? This happened in a hospital, and we all know things happen in the middle of the night, right? Third shift. This is the story, third shift, right? Electrical outlet goes out in one of the ORs. It's, middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They're setting up for surgeries in the morning. They lose power in one of the ORs, right? And 30 minutes before the first surgery, head nurse calls the engineering hotline. Guy answers the phone. He's on third shift. He's literally been on the job for 4 days. All he asked her was, what's the panel number on the outlet? Just tell me the panel number. Well, it's PNL 1NLB, right? He pulls his phone out of his pocket, pulls his iPad out. He looks at it and says, okay, I'm going to do a search, finds it. It shows exactly on that. You can see that floor plan down there, shows where that one panel is on a floor plan. He knows exactly how to get there. He knows exactly what room. Matter of fact, they even put the key number that they've got for the room, for that room to open the door on the pin with photos showing all that information. So they got panel schedule. He goes down there, turns the power back on, 5 minutes, done. Okay. That's what you can do. Even the new person can do that day one. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's looking at the same stuff, and you have full visibility to all of that documentation. At the end of the day, folks, what we're talking about here is documenting stuff when you find it, documenting those little things. Think about the people on your team that know where those hidden things are. I always say this: if someone has to call somebody else on your team and find out where something is, like a panel, where a shutoff is, where a piece of mechanical equipment is, throw up a giant red flag. Why do you have to call him? Why do you have to call her? It's because you don't know. Okay. Well, imagine everybody on your team knows. And as you find stuff, being able to document that, being able to find that panel that I mentioned earlier, that little room, they have multiple panels, you had a couple transformers in it. Being able to find that information is a big deal. Your team is never going to just remember where everything is. It's impossible. And if that's the ask, good luck. Okay, I hate to put it like that, but good luck, because that opens up your entire organization for risk. Because think about that. If you have to call 1 or 2 people to try and find something, are they never allowed to take vacation? I know we jokingly say, no, you're never allowed to take vacation, but they're going to take a vacation, which means who are you going to call when that guy's on a cruise ship and there's no cell service? Or who are you going to call when he's just out of pocket? He's in the mountains. I had one of my now they're a client. Actually, I was talking to one of their electricians, and he said, I go camping every year with my family. I was like, that's awesome. That's bonding. I was like, he goes, no, that's not why I'm telling you the story. Why I'm telling you the story is we camp at the same spot every year. We have for the last 15 years. And I'm like, that's great. He knows exactly what corner he goes around in the mountains where his cell doesn't work. His phone will ring off the hook when he's on vacation. So he goes where someone can't call him. So think about that. He's out completely out of touch. Okay. You can't get a hold of that person. So what happens? If you can't find the stuff, it's that time again. Now the team's out there running around trying to find stuff. They're popping ceiling tiles. They're tracing lines. They're trying to find stuff. Think about that. That's a risk for your organization. If you're relying on somebody, you're putting all that risk on if that person is there or not. That's a big deal. And to your organization, that can put patients at risk. That could put faculty at risk. That could put visitors at risk. But that also could put your organization at risk. If you lose power or you lose air in ORs, that can be tens of thousands of dollars an hour. Okay. And it's not even just the lost revenue, it's the impact on patients. Now the patients have to be rescheduled for surgeries. They have to be rescheduled for getting blood work. They have to get new labs. They have to do whatever the case may be, right? Or other tests. Doesn't matter, but it's an impact on that patient experience. And that's what we're talking about here. Patient experience, visitor experience, okay? Having that minimized, so that are minimizing the downtime, minimizing the impact on those different people that visit your buildings, okay? But it's also on your staff, right? It's a big deal. Funny thing about that guy I was telling you that goes around the corner and loses cell service, when he gets back, told everybody in the organization he was going to be on vacation. When he started back, got around that corner, his cell phone blew up with voicemails, texts, all this stuff. Hey, I didn't know you were out. Hey, can you come by my office today? Oh my gosh, we had this incident that happened. They don't have to say that anymore. We walked with that guy, documented all this stuff. He has all their drawings all in one spot. They rarely have to call him now. Okay. And usually they have to call him for something that's related, but it's not the emergency side. They can find it and make those decisions, even the new person. Okay. So single source of truth. We mentioned this at the beginning, everybody on the same page, everybody looking at the same stuff. Access to accurate information. When I say accurate information, the entire historical record of your building. This is the book of your building. And every building gets new pages added, right? Now all those pages are in one spot. Everybody's looking at it. Everybody can access it. It's orderly. You can find it when you need it, but all of your team can access it 24/7 wherever the heck they are, okay? The other challenge is, again, that 24/7 access. Do I have to jump in the car and run to the office to find stuff? Is it in my office and it's locked and I'm the only one that has a key? Everybody needs to be able to have access to it 24/7, 365. Even your vendors, you can give access. So they're working on a project, give them access through the 6 months or 18 months for the project, then turn them off. But now they have full visibility of all your building information all in one spot. But your staff can act immediately when they have to access that information, all from their phone. Every person on your team has a phone, all of them. All of them can access it in the field, whatever they need right now. And information no longer exists in just one person's head. Remember that single points of failure. If one person knows, that person's not going to be there forever. But the building still has to function. So having everybody on the same page and not having to call Carl is a big deal. But critical information is at everybody's fingertips, including first responders, including other stakeholders. Your leadership needs access to stuff. You can send it to them, send them one sheet, you can send them a folder, you can send them a whole building's worth of stuff, or just give them access. Okay. And they can now see all that stuff too. I'm actually, like I mentioned, I'm on site at a stadium right now. And I was walking around, we're mapping out mechanical equipment, shutoffs and emergency equipment. And I walked into an IDF room and there's some equipment in there. There's a couple of fan coil units for some split systems in there. And there were two guys over there working on the server rack. And he goes, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're mapping out all this stuff. And he said, can you map out all my IT closets? Sure. I said, we'll show you how to do it too. But yeah, I mean, we can work with your team to get that done. But at the same time, we set him up, got him started. They're walking around mapping all that stuff out. Custodial's the same way. Where are all your custodial closets? Where are all the other things that are important to your team? These are other departments, okay, that are looking for stuff that's critical for them. All of it is in one spot. Everybody can access that stuff. I've had a couple of people too with locks. Right? I want to know what locks are where. I want to know what keys, go into all those different locks. They're mapping out all their locks, all their key fob access, the card swipes, all of that stuff is all documented. Okay. All of that is really important. We're doing drip legs and fire risers and everything too. I mean, it's all that stuff that's important to these different groups within your organization. But again, everybody's looking at the same stuff all in one spot. So what's at risk and what's the impact? So Change orders, like we were talking about in the beginning, means cost overruns and delays. All right. Safety issues means increased liability to your organization, compliance failures, accreditation risks, inefficiencies, wasted time, and also resource drain. And when I say resource, that's not just money. That's a lot of components to that, but it's also time for your team. Okay. That drain on your teams, right? And knowledge loss means turnover and retirement vulnerability. That institutional knowledge walks out that door. It's not coming back. Okay. I've had several people that I've talked to that said, yeah, I think I'm going to charge a consulting fee. So every time my phone rings, I'll answer it if they pay me X. Okay. And a lot of organizations, they end up having to pay that because they have no other way to get that institutional knowledge out of somebody's head. I just showed you how you can do that. Those are real world impacts, real risks for organizations, and you can stop that today. I encourage you, share your stories. I encourage you, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. Our organization would love to talk to you about some of the things that you're doing and some of the challenges that you're facing. Love to talk to you and see how we might be able to help. So set your teams up for success. Invest in that centralized location. This is one of my clients here, and their team they are just absolute rock stars. These are just 3 of them, right? They have a huge team. And the challenge that they were facing was they're a moving target. Stuff is running around, but they are on top of it. They are absolute, I call these some of our facilities rock stars, but they invested in a centralized location for all their building information to be located, and everybody accesses it. But it closed that loop between their construction and maintenance teams. But also training facilities staff on documenting the changes that they make. Stuff changes in your building all the time. Document. Cannot stress that enough, because if only one person remembers that happened, or I'm up on a ladder and I see something and I have no way to document it, imagine me pulling my phone out, taking a picture of it, hitting save, and everybody on the team sees it. That's what we're talking about, is instant access to all your building information as it sits today and moving forward as your building changes. So let's open it up for some questions. Wendy.
All right, let's do that. We've got one right here in the queue, and I'll remind everybody to use that Q&A function right at the bottom of the screen. We have a little bit of time to get those questions asked. Our first one comes from Catherine, and she's asking if it makes sense to have the same teams that manage life safety drawings to also manage MEP drawings.
So the way we operate it is we take that burden off of the client. So whether it's the design construction side of the house, the facility side of the house, right, whichever entry point we work with, we manage all the drawings. So literally when you get a closeout package at the end, you upload it to a portal, you don't do anything. Our system does it. It organizes all of it. It creates that new overlay that I showed where any new changes, they're updated live. Literally, as soon as the drawings are uploaded, it goes into the queue, into the process, and all that organization happens in the background. It doesn't take your team anything other than if you can drag and drop files into a folder.
Wow. And then you've got your single source of truth.
There you go. Moving forward. Yep.
Let's talk about time on the actual conversion side. How long does a paper conversion to this kind of process usually take?
Yeah, obviously it depends on the size of your facilities. If you've got hundreds and hundreds of buildings, obviously it's going to take a little longer than if you've got one building. But at the end of the day, we're traditionally doing our implementations between 90 and 120 days. And when I say 90 to 120 days, that's by the time we do our site walks, we pick up all the drawings, and literally we hit the ground running, and it's trained in your hands, what I just showed, inside of 90 to 120 days. Done.
Great. So speaking of scope, a little bit of that, and you said, sometimes there are those variables. What about the number of active projects? Somebody's saying we have more than 120 on our books. Is there a limit to those numbers as you start to go through the system?
No, there's not. Ours is unlimited drawing sets, unlimited projects. I mean, we've had some of our clients that have had there's one that's a historical, one that comes to mind right away is a historical building. They've had, I think the last count was like 160 plan sets. Not all big, don't get me wrong, but a lot of little ones too. But every project means a change to the building of something. So it's important that all of those drawings are in there. But the way it's organized is it's by date, by project name, and you can see again with that overlay what drawings touched all the different parts of your building. So it takes that, you may have 150, 200, whatever different plan sets, or you may have 10, right? If I've got 10 drawing sets, I still got to open up each one of them and try and find it on a share drive someplace. Now I can look and say, oh, wait a minute, I've got 10 drawing sets for the building, but only 2 touch that or that floor. Boom. I just narrowed I just took my time down in, a tenth trying to find it. And on top of that, I'm finding it on my phone in a couple seconds, clicking, because all the plan sets too, keep in mind, now I didn't say this during the presentation, but every plan set that has an index, every sheet in the index is hyperlinked to the sheet too. So you can swipe through the sheets, but then every detail call out on every sheet is also linked to the detail. So, I mean, it's not as simple as just a static drawing that's on the share drive someplace. Oh no, these are fine-tuned smart drawings.
Okay. I've got a question, but I also want to share a comment from Jacob. He said, it's great having this session. One of my struggles with managers and supervisors to document information and drawings. And then he says, wishing you more wins. We all are. But also another question. Another question comes in, somebody saying we're about to lose 4 guys with 30 years of institutional knowledge. Maybe these are the people who aren't exactly sharing some of their information. So they want to know, like, how quickly can we act on this? How do we keep capturing this information? How long does it take to map out these things? We talked about it a little bit, but in terms of that institutional knowledge.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when we're brought in, again, we have that conversation. We sit down and we have that conversation to really figure out, what are some of those challenges that people are facing. And I kind of look at it as more of a workshop, and I think the funny thing that I always say is, I don't even know if I need to sell you anything, or we need to sell you anything. I don't know what you need,
Right.
And at the end of the day, we try to figure out and gauge what you're doing today. Okay. And then figure out what's the priority. Is it drawings? Is it mapping out mechanicals? Is it shut off? I don't know. Yeah. But sitting down and really figuring out what that looks like. But our team is, we've done it a couple of different ways where we've had an escort that will walk with us. And sometimes it's the guy who's been there for 25 years, 30 years. Other times it's the guy who started 2 weeks ago, who still doesn't know where anything is. Right. But in other instances, we'll get master keys and a key fob and say, go. And we literally open every door. And we're looking in closets. And it's funny because, I'll walk and we have a kind of a standing joke on our different teams where we'll say, how many times are we going to hear, I didn't know that was there during an implementation? And it was almost like a running checklist because when I go into a room, my knee-jerk reaction is I look behind the door. And the reason I look behind the door, I guarantee you I will find a panel somewhere that someone didn't know it was there. And it happens. And it's because there's so much stuff in a building. But again, all of that site walk, all of the mapping, all of the scanning of the drawings in, organizing all the digital assets that you've got, digital drawings that you've got, all of it's within that same 90 to 120 days. And it's done and in your hands. I mean, your team is literally hitting the ground running.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the need to maybe interact or involve other platforms. I'm going to try to combine questions because we're getting a few, and thank you, everybody, but I've got an eye on time. Somebody's asking about if this system works with other inventory systems, such as building reports. And then Catherine's back to ask about if you have any history of working with Joint Commission or Joint Commission survey using this technology. So have at it.
I'll take that. I'll take that in 2 parts there.
Yeah.
So working with other systems, we work with dynamic links. Okay, meaning I can link out. A lot of organizations are using single sign-on as well, so they're logging into multiple systems. But
Right.
where we pull in data from other systems is traditionally I'll get an export. Well, let me back up. I've done it a couple of different ways where they've got an inventory of assets, and there usually is assigned some kind of a unique identifier, asset number, or maybe a name or something like that. We import that in so it matches. So we're matching one to one. And then they're just toggling between, because again, you've got that connector number to be
Right.
able to search between the two different units or two different systems. But again, a lot of times, and I hate to say it like this, but many of the asset inventory systems that are out there are way off, meaning stuff's been replaced, it has never been updated in their system, or they've even had an FCA, a facilities condition assessment.
Okay.
A facilities condition assessment is great, but keep in mind, a facilities condition assessment is a snapshot in time. Okay. So if you're only doing a condition assessment or not updating your condition assessment up until your next assessment, how much stuff changed in 3 years? How much stuff changed in 5 years? However long it was for that next assessment. So it doesn't take long for that to get out of date. Where this comes into play is as your team is changing stuff in the field, they're documenting, and they can put some unique identifiers in there to let whoever that admin person is that manages your work order system or your asset registry system, that they know that, hey, these units changed. We need to import that in and then purge the old.
Okay.
Now, from the Joint Commission side, yes, we work with a ton of hospitals nationwide and with accreditation. So housing all of that critical documentation associated with, we've all seen the binders, all the different binders going into healthcare. They're all over the place. Well, documenting all of those, we do actually have a module that can manage that documentation too and keep you on track. For what's, we've got some new changes, obviously, that are coming up with Joint Commission, too, that are going to be pretty big. And we're waiting to see what the impact is going to be on that for our facilities client, healthcare clients. But again, you can house all the documentation within here. And I've even had a couple of our clients that have even toyed with giving access to Joint Commission during the survey so they can see all the documented stuff, all the mechanicals, all the emergency stuff. And we've got a lot of our clients that are starting to look at mapping out even my fire rated walls and all of that stuff and taking photos of them too and pinning the locations where all those are as well. Yeah.
That has to be, well, we were talking a little bit about efficiency and time saving from a Joint Commission perspective. That's a really interesting opportunity. I think we have time for one more question, and it has to do, I think, with that efficiency as well. Talking about somebody's asking about contingency funds being written into project budgets. I think you spoke to this more specifically earlier in your presentation, David, but let's revisit that topic in terms of, what does this do for contingency funding once this system is in place?
Yeah, it really helps mitigate some of those unknowns. Okay. And I use air quotes when I say unknowns, and it's only for the reason that I call them blind spots. Okay. If you're not giving all of your building information over to your GC, to your architect at the very beginning, when you start even planning a project, they're going to have blind spots. And those blind spots are those undocumented, as I mentioned, things that either have changed over time that you don't have the documentation for, or maybe your team made a change and it's not documented. All of those can snowball and can cause, and again, it's what do they say? Death by paper cuts. Okay. Yes. It's not always a big giant thing. It's 30 other things that happen during a project that are those unforeseen conditions. And it could be, a stairwell. It could be a riser is someplace, or who knows what the heck it could be. Plug your scenario in here, but it is those unknowns, and it's a ton of time, and all those cause delays. It cause money. I always kind of think of it this way. It's not just about the current cost of things and if things are going up or down. It's just the fact that delays, if this thing that they found now impacts and pushes your closing date by 2 weeks, what's the impact on your facility? What's the
Yeah.
impact on your team? So whether it's a ground up or usually ground up, I mean, that's all from scratch. But if they're building even in a place that was once another building, and they're digging and they're trying to lay foundation, and they start hitting lines that were from the previous building, that's one scenario. Okay. Again, undocumented stuff. But if they're renovating, a third floor of a building and it delays it by 2 weeks, well, think about that. Now you can't access those new patient rooms for 2 more weeks. What's that revenue loss? What's are you still outsourcing to one of your other sites, or is it plug your scenario in here?
Yeah.
It's just time, and time is money.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're saying plug in your scenario. I think we could, enhance that to nightmare scenario because a little bit adds up. We are at the end of time for questions. David, a couple of parting thoughts from you, or just maybe recommendations of where we should go next as we come to the end of our time together.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate everybody joining. I would highly encourage anybody who's listening. If you're in this scenario where you're struggling, call me. I'm happy to just have a conversation. I'm not a sales guy. Call me. I'd love to hear your story, hear what you're doing, and we'll see if we can help. At the end of the day, we're just here trying to help and fix a problem that so many organizations have. And is it one thing or another? I don't know, but let's have that conversation. I'm happy to have it, and see what we might be able to do to help you.
Great. Thank you for that, David. And for everybody on the call today, we will be getting more materials out to you. ARC will be in touch after our webcast today. If we didn't get to your question, don't worry. We have been able to log all these questions, so the responses will be coming. Just watch your email. And while you're here still with us, check the related content area and the earn certification modules on your screen. That's where you're going to access today's presentation materials and your CEU credits. Congratulations. And finally, I just want to say once again, thank you, David, for a truly meaningful, really, really helpful and very important conversation, a great presentation. We really appreciate your time and expertise and your commitment to our industry. You're welcome.
Oh, appreciate that. Thank you. It's a labor of love.
Yeah. It shows. I want to thank everybody for attending. And as we wrap up today's webcast, in the words of one of our fellow attendees today, we're wishing you all more wins. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.